Welcome to Pieces Here. I'm Avis Kalfsbeek, and we're taking a little rest between podcast series to help Kitty O'Compost improve her reporter voice for peace. Kitty is a character I made up who's a little offbeat, a satiric smarty pants, and she's getting ready to report on a big story about peace, AI, and the future of the commons. It's called Control AI DISARM. At the end, you'll also hear the Next Peacelands, a roll call of global armed conflicts and arms exports. If that's too much today, it's okay to end early. But if you can stay, I hope you'll let it deepen your resolve for peace. As usual, you can find the words and books I make for peace at aviskalfsbeek.com. Now over to Kitty. Today's reading comes from Ivan Turgenev, a Russian novelist with a soft spot for the quiet ache inside people's lives. He wrote about longing and hesitation and all the tender ways we try to love one another even when we don't quite know how. The Unhappy Girl is one of his gentler stories, a small tale about pride, sorrow, and a heart trying its best to stay steady. I'll be reading just a bit of it, enough to feel the shape of the room and the mood he's setting. Well, darling, I could read the opening of an epic or the directions on a seed packet, and it'd still do the trick, because peace finds us in the quiet places, the ones where we're listening, steady and kind, and nobody, for goodness sake, is holding a gosh darn gun. Following is an excerpt from The Unhappy Girl by Ivan Turgenev. Yes, began Pyotr Gavrilovich. Those were painful days, and I would rather not recall them. But I have made you a promise. I shall have to tell you the whole story. Listen. That's tail scratching in the background. I was living at the time, the winter of 1835, in Moscow, in the house of my aunt, the sister of my dead mother. I was 18. I had only just passed from the second into the third course in the Faculty of Language. That was what it was called in those days, in the Moscow University. My aunt was a gentle, quiet woman, a widow. She lived in a big wooden house in Ostovzonka, one of those warm, cozy houses such as I fancy one can find nowhere else but in Moscow. She saw hardly anyone, sat from morning till night in the drawing room with two companions, drank the choicest tea, played patience, and was continually requesting that the room should be fumigated. Thereupon her companions ran into the hall. A few minutes later, an old servant in livery would bring a copper pan with a bunch of mint on a hot brick, and stepping hurriedly upon the narrow strips of carpet, he would sprinkle the mint with vinegar. White fumes always puffed up around his wrinkled face, and he frowned and turned away, while the canaries in the dining room chirped their hardest, exasperated by the hissing of the smoldering mint. I was fatherless and motherless, and my aunt spoiled me. She placed the whole of the ground floor at my complete disposal. My rooms were furnished very elegantly, not at all like a student's room, in fact. There were pink curtains in the bedroom, and a muslin canopy adorned with blue rosettes towering over my bed. Those rosettes were, I'll own, rather an annoyance to me. To my thinking, my effeminacies were calculated to lower me in the eyes of my companions. As it was, they nicknamed me the boarding school miss. I could never succeed in forcing myself to smoke. I studied, why conceal my shortcomings, very lazily, especially at the beginning of the course. I went out a great deal. My aunt had bestowed on me a wide sledge fit for a general, with a pair of sleek horses. At the houses of the gentry my visits were rare, but at the theatre I was quite at home, and I consumed masses of tarts at the restaurants. For all that, I permitted myself no breach of decorum, and behaved very discreetly, un jeune homme de bonne maison. I would not for anything in the world have pained my kind aunt, and besides I was naturally of a rather cool temperament. From my earliest years I had been fond of chess. I had no idea of the science of the game, but I didn't play badly. One day in a cafe I was the spectator of a prolonged contest at chess between two players, of whom one, a fair-haired young man of about 25, struck me as playing well. The game ended in his favor. I offered to play a match with him. He agreed, and in the course of an hour beat me easily 3 times running. "You have a natural gift for the game," he pronounced in a courteous tone, noticing probably that my vanity was suffering. "But you don't know the openings. You ought to study a chess book, Agassi or Petrov." "Do you think so? But where can I get such a book?" "Come to me. I will give you one." He gave me his name and told me where he was living. Next day I went to see him, and a week later we were almost inseparable. My new acquaintance was called Alexander Dadadovich Vustov. He lived with his mother, a rather wealthy woman, the widow of a privy councillor, but he occupied a little lodge apart and lived quite independently, just as I did at my aunt's. He had a post in the Department of Court Affairs. I became genuinely attached to him. I had never in my life met a young man more sympathetic. Everything about him was charming and attractive. His graceful figure, his amiable smile on the crimson lips, the light curls of soft hair over the rather narrow snow-white brow. Fustov's character was remarkable for exceptional serenity and a sort of amiable restrained affability. He was never preoccupied and was always satisfied with everything, but on the other hand he was never ecstatic over anything. Every excess, even in good feeling, jarred upon him. "That savage, savage," he would say with a faint shrug, half closing his golden eyes. Marvelous were those eyes of Fustov's. They invariably expressed sympathy, goodwill, even devotion. It was also at a later period that I noticed that the expression of his eyes resulted solely from their setting, that it never changed, even when he was sipping his soup or smoking a cigar. His preciseness became a byword between us. His grandmother indeed had been a German. Nature had endowed him with all sorts of talents. He danced capitally, was a dashing horseman, and a first-rate swimmer, did carpentering, carving, that's tail scratching again, and joinery, bound books, and cut out silhouettes, painted in watercolors, nosegays of mechanics, physics, and chemistry, but everything only up to a certain point. Only for languages he had no great facility. Even French he spoke rather badly. He spoke in general little, and his share in our students' discussions was mostly limited to the bright sympathy of his glance and smile. To the fair sex, Fustov was attractive, undoubtedly, but on this subject of such importance among young people he did not care to enlarge, and fully deserved the nickname given him by his comrades, the discreet Don Juan. I was not dazzled by Fustov. There was nothing in him to dazzle, but I prized his affection, though in reality it was only manifested by his never refusing to see me when I called. To my mind, Fustov was the happiest man in the world. His life ran so smoothly. His mother, brothers, sisters, aunts, and uncles all adored him. He was on exceptionally good terms with all of them, and enjoyed the reputation of a paragon in his family. One day I went round to him rather early and did not find him in his study. He called to me from the next room. Sounds of panting and splashing reached me from there. Every morning Fustov took a cold shower bath and afterwards for a quarter of an hour practiced gymnastic exercises in which he had attained remarkable proficiency. Excessive anxiety about one's physical health he did not approve of, but he did not neglect necessary care. Don't neglect yourself, don't overexcite yourself, work in moderation was his precept. Fustov had not yet made his appearance when the outer door of the room where I was waiting flew wide open, and there walked in a man about 50, wearing a bluish uniform. He was a stout, squarely built man with milky whitish eyes, in a dark red face, and a perfect cap of thick gray curly hair. This person stopped short, looked at me, opened his mouth wide, and with metallic chuckle, he gave himself a smart slap on his haunch, kicking up his leg in front as he did so. Thank you for letting me practice Kitty's reporting voice for the big story ahead. Control AI disarm. Now stay with me a few minutes longer if you're able for the Next Peacelands. Podcasts usually have ads you fast forward through. This one doesn't. Instead, I invite you to pause here just for a few minutes and listen with an open heart, not to memorize the numbers, not to analyze the politics. As I read each conflict, I'll say aloud, "Peace is here." You're welcome to say it with me or just think it quietly. If you'd like to read, sing, or paint your own version of the Next Peacelands, or tell me how to say peace is here in your language, I'd love to hear it. This is the Next Peacelands. Not for doom and gloom, not for pity or sadness, we speak and we listen to these geographic locations of wars and the numbers of deaths of human souls to help put the great disarmament, the period in which we live now, and peace at the forefront of our daily consciousness and actions. Following are the major and minor armed conflicts, over 1,000 deaths in 1 year as of November 2025. Myanmar conflict since 1948, 199,000 total fatalities, 13,000 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Arab-Israeli conflict since 1948, 263,000 total fatalities, 25,000 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Congolese conflicts since 1996, 211,000 cumulative fatalities, 10,000 deaths year to date 2025. Peace is here. Islamist insurgencies in Maghreb Sahel since 2002, 464,000 total fatalities, 18,000 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Mexican drug war since 2006, 417,000 total fatalities, 11,000 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Sudanese conflicts since 2008, 1,400,000 cumulative fatalities, 20,000 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Russo-Ukrainian war since 2014, 400,000 cumulative fatalities, 66,000 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Ethiopian civil conflict since 2018, 610,000 cumulative fatalities, 5,000 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Colombian-Venezuelan conflicts since 1964, 458,000 cumulative fatalities, 2,000 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Afghan conflict since 1978, 2,800,000 cumulative fatalities, 3,000 deaths 2025 year to date. Peace is here. Somali civil war, current phase, since 1991, 1 million cumulative fatalities, 10,000 deaths 2025 year to date. Peace is here. Civil conflicts in Nigeria since 1998, 104,000 cumulative fatalities, 3,000 deaths year to date. Peace is here. The Yemeni civil war crisis since 2011, 382,000 cumulative fatalities, 3,000 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Syrian conflict spillovers since 2011, 656,000 cumulative fatalities, 9,000 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Cameroonian conflicts since 2012, 9,000 cumulative fatalities, 900 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Ecuadorian drug war since 2018, 9,000 cumulative fatalities, 4,000 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Haitian crisis since 2018, 20,000 cumulative fatalities, 3,000 deaths year to date. Peace is here. Does that mean the countries that weren't mentioned are more peaceful? Some are not. Here are the world's largest weapons exporters according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute's Arms Transfers Database. These numbers use TIV, a value that reflects how much destructive military weaponry a country sends abroad, regardless of the payment or cost. The United States exports $729 billion in weapons volume, 43% of total global exports. Peace is here. France exports $136 billion in weapons volume, 10% of global exports. Peace is here. Russia exports $155 billion in weapons volume, 8% of global exports. Peace is here. China exports $61 billion in weapons volume, 6% of global exports. Peace is here. Germany exports $90 billion in weapons volume, 6% of global exports. Peace is here. Italy exports $37 billion in weapons volume, 5% of global exports. Peace is here. The United Kingdom exports $144 billion in weapons volume, 4% of global exports. Peace is here.